We are now going to talk about how to create a master CV in the format that will carry over to special use CVs for varied purposes. We will focus only on important tips for optimizing and preparing a master CV that can easily be tailored for 1. Special use CVs, and 2. Executive summaries. At the end of this unit, there are some resources for general CV preparation. Let's take a step back for a minute. What does curriculum vitae mean? The curriculum vitae is a snapshot of the individual's entire professional life and therefore should accurately reflect all major activities relevant to the profession throughout the individual's career. This includes everything from prior faculty appointments to committees and assorted responsibilities. Some activities in college and graduate or professional school are also relevant, such as leadership roles in governance, presentations at conferences, publications, etc. So don't leave out your formative school years. So why are we doing this? Remembering all your relevant accomplishments each time you have to tailor a CV is close to impossible. You often need to do this on short notice. Deleting sections from a master CV on a computer is a lot easier than remembering and adding specific accomplishments that fit the purpose. To do this, your master CV must be complete, in the optimum format to showcase you, and update at all times. Jane Thorson from the University of Michigan spoke about the continuously updated CV. It is a term that I have embraced. Adding a single talk you just gave or a paper that was just published takes very little time. If you wait to update your CV once or twice a year, I can guarantee that you will forget something. So try to do it as soon as the event has happened. These are the minimum categories that need to be in your master CV. Realize that formatting, the order of categories, which categories are needed, vary by institution and purpose. In this module, we're focusing on the content and categories that should be present on the master CV. You should put the categories on the master CV in an order that is logical for you, and then adjust as required for special use. For example, if your role is primarily as a researcher, you may want to have your grant history close to the top. On the other hand, if you're known best as an educator, your accomplishments in teaching should come early in the CV. For scholarly accomplishments, don't forget to list all presentations even when you're not the presenter. You are a co-author. Also, there is lots of change these days with electronic publications, social media, appearances on radio and TV talk shows, government or disciplinary position papers. Don't forget to include them in your master CV. We will discuss a little further on content to be considered in these categories in the slides that follow to make sure that you are optimizing and including all content on the master CV. And, of course, be accurate in what you put on the CV and be consistent with formatting. For example, make all your journal citations consistent. We're now going to focus on some tips that we recommend to optimize all the information in your CV and also ultimately in your executive summary. As you can see, using my own CV as an example, I am the easiest to get permission from. I put my current demographic information first. This image is a snapshot of a few of those core required elements that come at the start of the CV. A few general tips. Do not write curriculum vitae alone at the top. The reader knows it's a CV, but needs to know, first of all, who it belongs to. So your name and information can be alone at the top. You may also want to consider putting in the left or right upper corner curriculum vitae prepared on, with a date, in a header. Make sure to include page numbers as well. Consider using the format page number of total number. Positions are on the left, and dates are on the right. Why? You want the dates in a separate column so it doesn't take a scavenger hunt to see when you did what. We suggest putting them to the right because you want to make the reader see your interesting information on the left first before trying to see if there are any gaps on your CV. Of course, the date column on the right applies to languages where we read from left to right. It may be different in Egypt. This varies greatly with institutional formatting. Many institutions want the dates on the left. The important thing is to be consistent and to keep the dates in a separate dedicated column. One other consideration with the dates is the chronologic order. Note on this example, the appointments are in reverse chronology. Why? Well, to help highlight what you're doing now. It's more relevant than what you did 10 or 30 years ago. That being said, many institutions will want things arranged in chronologic order to see your progression. The important thing for your master's CV is to pick a chronologic order that makes sense to you and be consistent throughout your document. You may need to alter formatting for those special purposes. A few tips on the categories. Note that the only personal information I have included is my citizenship. It is important to show that you can legally work in the U.S., so inclusion of citizenship and visa status, if applicable, is appropriate. Do not include other personal identifying information on your master's CV, such as social security number, date of birth, etc. Overall, note the way the major sections are differentiated by being in all caps and underlined. You may do it differently, and you want to do what you can to make it easy for the reader. Also, be simple in formatting. Many of the current electronic application portals do not allow much leeway. Capitals, underlining, asterisking, and italicizing are often the maximum flexibility, and maybe not all of those are available. Some key tips here. For the core education category, it is important to list the year, the degree, the field of study, and the institution in a way that makes them easy to identify, such as columns. For certain fields and degrees, it may be important to list the topic for a dissertation or thesis in the master CV. When we think about postgraduate training, be complete. This may be the category to include extra experiences and training that you have had that did not result in a degree, so they don't belong under education, but that should be highlighted, like the AAMC Mid-Career Faculty Development Seminar in this example, or ELAM for all of you. The last core category is honors and awards. Be sure to include the name of the award, the awarding agency, and what you are being recognized for. The category of service on the master's CV is broad. It covers things that are not directly research, clinical care, or teaching. You know it when you think about it. Remember, you are painting a picture of your career path. This is where highlighting progression to leadership roles is important. Subheadings can be extremely important here to make things distinct as you tell your story of your accomplishments in list form. There are many ways you can organize. This example shows one way of formatting and some common categories. Your way of organizing may have to change as you gain seniority in your career. Here are some organizational options. 1, you can go by chronologic order. This is only useful if there are just a few entities. 2, they can go by function. Consider a heading such as major administrative leadership positions that can then be divided with subheadings such as international, national, regional, local. This goes to your visibility and reputation beyond your school and local community. Think about your local institutions within the school as well as within the hospital or your division, for example. Different committees that you may have served on or chaired. Highlight some of your major leadership roles separately whatever makes most sense for the Master CV. 3, you could categorize by most active or relevant professional organizations that you are a member of and have potentially served on task forces or committees. Again, consider subheadings for international, national, regional, local. Service with respect to scholarship is thinking about serving as a reviewer for grants, abstracts, journal, or serving in editorial roles. You should also include a category highlighting work you have done in the community. This could be work at a local school, like serving as a science fair judge, working with a religious organization or a social service organization, making presentations to the community, working in support of the arts, officer of professional organizations, serving on boards and committees of community organizations, and providing professional services to the community. These are just some examples to start you brainstorming in this area. Again, when you derive a specific person or institutional CV, they may ask for the categories to have slightly different names, but the ideas are really the same. You may consider bolding roles that are active. This is a place to reflect on the task forces you served on, things you may have done as a favor or request that belong here. We have some sample CVs at the end as references to help you think about how you might identify and list some of your activities. When you think of teaching, you're really thinking of all your different educational activities. This again is an area of the CV where headings and subheadings can make your roles clear, as you may need to distinguish local, regional, and national activities, as well as teaching courses versus teaching clinically. Again, there are a variety of ways you can organize. 1, consider organizing by the 5 areas generally recognized as roles for educators: teaching activities, learner assessment, curriculum development, advising, mentoring, leadership, and administration. 2, or there may be another model that works better for you. Some tips. When describing these activities, you should think about the audience, the name of the course, learning level, such as student, resident, faculty, years, hours, and frequency you taught, topics covered, your role, such as member of a rotation team versus a course that you designed and led. Invited presentations should include the title, audience, and location as applicable. There are examples in the references at the end of this unit to help you think about how to categorize some of the educational activities that you have led. These are just examples. Scholarship is now much broader than just peer-reviewed print articles. With so many types of outlets for dissemination of scholarship beyond just print media, there are many more categories of scholarship that should be included in your master CV. Just think of all the ways that you disseminate your work. Beyond print articles, think about blogs, videos, workshops. The goals of this part of your master CV are: 1, to showcase dissemination of your work into the public domain, including the type of platform the work is published, whether it underwent peer review, and whether it is local, regional, or national. And also, number 2, use headings, subheadings, and bold text strategically to show the optimum you. 3rd, be consistent and accurate to showcase your attention to detail and enhance your credibility. And finally, number 4, number items in long lists to make the reviewer's job easier. Now, our way of organizing might not fit you. This list is provided to make sure you think broadly. This list is also a nice way to remind you of what you could be aspiring to accomplish. There are example CVs and templates included in the references as you work through how to best capture you. Publication is a hallmark of scholarship. You might want to separate categories for peer-reviewed publications. These could include reports of original work, case reports, review articles, editorials or commentaries, letters to the editor, book authorships, editorships, and chapters. Published abstracts must have references that can be looked up. List articles in press, but not those in preparation. Non-peer-reviewed publications. Book chapters may be included as non-peer-reviewed materials. For abstracts, remember the title, meeting, location and dates, as well as if it was a platform or plenary session. There are many other categories that are emerging now. Very importantly, be consistent throughout the CV with respect to citation format. Often people will include the PubMed IDs for articles and sometimes an electronic link when allowed. You may consider annotating if you are not first or senior author to clarify what your role was. Professional materials could be a separate category or perhaps included in your non-peer-reviewed publications. It often includes educational, workshops, presentations, some of which might now be peer-reviewed. This category may include materials like online publications, computer modules, videos, materials published in the lay press or as blogs, indicating again that they are non-peer-reviewed. Workshops may be included here, or they may fall under invited presentations in the teaching section of your master CV. Reports for disciplinary organizations or government agencies might also fit here. The type of presentation matters as well. Make sure to annotate if your field has some quirks. For example, before the everyone has a computer era, in visual fields such as radiology, exhibits or posters had a greater impact than in other fields. Analyzing details of a radiologic image required more time than a podium presentation would allow, and they did not project well anyhow. So posters or exhibits were often preferred. Consider subheadings such as international, national, regional, local. The geographic distribution of your presentations is relevant. As careers progress, in general, our visibility broadens, and so do the places we go to present. Many schools look for national and/or international reputation as a criterion for promotion to associate or full professor. How to format the presentation sections depends on the number. For larger lists, I would usually put geography, for example international, as the major headers with the types of presentation under each. With smaller numbers, it may be better to categorize them by type and then note the geography or location in parentheses. Work that was presented, accompanied by a published abstract, and by that I mean not just the conference booklet. I'm talking about a real publication, and subsequently resulted in a formal publication, can be listed in all three places. Each is a different category, can be verified, and all are legitimate accomplishments in their category. Now, about professional scholarly positions. Even if you have listed these under service, here's another way to note them and emphasize their scholarly connotations. These may include editorships, review committee appointments, visiting scholar appointments, consulting activity assignments, and many other categories. Patents, procedures, and methods have some special requirements. In this age of innovation and entrepreneurship, these can be important scholarly outputs. For example, an innovative surgical technique, or a new laboratory methodology, or quality improvement in patient safety procedures and technology innovations. Grant funding. On the master CV, make sure you have everything that may be edited for your institutional or special purpose CVs. A description of the work in a brief sentence is helpful. Use strategic subheadings. The broad heading might be research funding support or report of funded and unfunded projects. And then subheadings can help distinguish the categories into ones such as past funding, internal and external, current funding, also internal and external, current applications, unfunded projects. Choose the categories that make the most sense to you to maintain this large repository. Adjust the categories based on the purpose you are deriving a special purpose external CV for. Include title, funding agency, amount, start and end date of funding, a link to publications when applicable, and your role, i.e. PI, co-PI, etc. Be sure to describe your role if it's not clear. Your role and what the project entails should be clear. Remember, this is the story of you. Now for the famous all-encompassing other category. If you do some unusual work, create a new category for it. For example, policies written for your State Department of Health and Human Services, or if you host a radio or TV medical show. Here are some tips for optimizing how you present your scholarly contributions. Make sure they are complete and formatted consistently. In my experience on search or promotion committees, you really want to make life easy for them, and finding specific information to discuss together can be time-consuming. Thus, I recommend numbering if you have over 1 or 2 pages of publications, so if there's a question, the committee can find the item quickly. And we do acknowledge that this helps foster the mentality of merely counting publications. So it's a trade-off between convenience for the committee and showcasing your work. Highlighting your name and mentees will explain why you are not always the first author. This is particularly important for those faculty who often have a large mentoring load, women or minorities. Make sure you include your contribution and significance of work. If you are not a first or senior author or not the PI, the annotation explaining your contribution to the work will get you more credit for it. If there is a category where you have nothing to enter, don't list the category at all. Now, in your university formatted CV, they may have a mandatory format with categories that do not apply to you, where you have to write not applicable. But on your master and external CVs, you're the boss, and you should put only what applies to you. You may want to include a publication impact factor for each item, if required by your school or expected in your field. Keep in mind that impact factors are scores that change over time, so if you include them, they will have to be updated periodically. The impact factor du jour also changes. We acknowledge that there's a great deal of controversy about impact factors. For example, in my career, as I got promoted through the ranks, journal impact factors were required. For years, the Journal of Pediatric Surgery was the only place interested in our topics, so if I did not publish there, nobody would have read my work. As a consequence, citations were all from the same journal. Plus, journal distribution was limited to the few hundreds of pediatric surgeons around. Since these are both key contributors to the traditional impact factor, the journal's impact factor was usually in the 1-point-something range. Comparing this to the New England Journal of Medicine, Nature, Science, Blood, and other broad topic or broad distribution journals with impact factors in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, my papers looked absolutely irrelevant. I spent a lot of time explaining to P&T committees why we had to publish in that particular journal. How to format the presentation section depends on the number. For larger lists, I would usually put geography, example international, as the major headers with the types of presentation under each. With smaller numbers, it may be better to categorize them by type and then note the geography and location in parentheses. Here are some examples from my own CV to show annotation what my role was when I was not the first or senior author. This photo reflects the process of having the master CV, the mother bear, and multiple specific CVs, the 3 adorable cubs, all looking in the same direction for the same goal of showcasing you to your best advantage. Now that you have all of your professional life's accomplishments listed in your master CV, it's time to adapt to your audience. This should be distinct based on your purpose and your audience. Clarity accuracy and relevance are key. The formatting concepts remain the same. Some sections may be shortened to show only highlights that are in a category that is not key for a particular purpose, whereas other sections from the master CV might be left intact. You can use key phrases, recent, in the last X number of years, or selected from X number of publications. For example, if you are applying for a leadership position in education, everything you have accomplished in teaching and education is relevant. Your early case reports on clinical fascinomas, on the other hand, may not be. This is where your own good judgment and/or career counselor can help. What is the best way to ensure you stand out among applicants? Is it showing your entire body of work or presenting a succinct, tailored portion? That is strategic career presentation. If you haven't been promoted to professor yet, this is an ideal time to get your documents in order. So here's your assignment. Reformat your master CV using the guidelines and the template provided, and modify your master CV into a separate CV for a particular purpose. This slide has some general resources for career planning that have been produced by the Group on Women in Medicine and Science and by the Group on Faculty Affairs of the AAMC. Many of these articles are included in the appendix of your workbook. This slide gives several detailed examples of CV templates. One is from my consulting firm, and I give it to my clients. One is from Harvard, and one is from Johns Hopkins. The Harvard and Johns Hopkins examples do not necessarily follow our formatting suggestions for chronology and dates, which we recommend being listed on the right. We are providing them as they have very comprehensive examples of categories that you may well want to use. There is also another document with directions for an easy way to reformat for reverse chronologic order.